Hi, I'm Stephen Halasnik. One of the things that I think helped me to build companies was really focusing on the interviewing process. And one of the things that happens when you're a business owner for a small business is we all tend to kind of just think, well, we want to fill that position. And, we kind of are excited about that and want to get it over with because we have other things to do and we want to fill it with a body. And one of the things I would tell you is that I've made those mistakes, and building a great interview and hiring process is probably the number one most important. It is the number one most important thing a small business owner can do. So I'll give you a little bit of background. I've owned actually two of the 6 companies I built were staffing companies. So you would think that these temporary staffing companies that I built were, we would be good at interviewing and be good at hiring because that's what we did for a living. But the first company I started, and these weren't simple like administrative type of temporary staffing companies. These were, kind of professional staffing companies. One was placed high-end technology consultants into Fortune 500 companies on long-term temporary assignments. The other one was one that placed registered nurses at hospitals throughout the United States on long-term temporary assignments. So, but what we really kind of found out was that at least with the first company, was that we really weren't great at hiring people. And quite honestly, the first staffing company I had, I really didn't like the people I worked with. And so when I started the second company, I really wanted to do a better job of hiring the right people that only did a great job and people I liked working with. So I really dove into the interviewing process and made sure that, there was good technique behind what we were doing and a good methodology. So, and both these companies did well, but the second company, the second staffing, and from then on, I just put a lot of emphasis on making sure that I hired the right people. And I want to share with you some of the things that I learned. The first thing that you should know about me is that the first 8 years of my career, I would work for Xerox Corporation. And while I was at Xerox, the people that I worked with were really well polished. They were college graduates, dressed really well, spoke really well, really, really polished individuals. And that was the type of people I thought that I needed when I started my own companies. Well, when I get into the staffing business, is what I kind of learned is those type of people don't want to work at a job that's really, really hard, like working at a staffing company, recruiters and account managers. And so, after a number of failed attempts and a number of times when I hired people that didn't work out, I kind of, after 3 years, said, wait a minute, again, let's take a step back. Let's really get a better process down here. And I really dove into it. I read everything I could about interviewing and hiring. I kind of really looked inside ourselves. What I really saw was that the people that we're hiring were just not the right fit, and that we really needed to do a better job of identifying who the right people were. So some of the things that we did, and these may not work for you, but the purpose of this video today is to help you understand that if you hire the right people, if you're a business owner, it makes your job so much easier and your company will grow better because of it as well. So really build your own methodology. So let me give you some things one of the things we learned. One of the things that we learned is almost 100% of our work was always done over the phone, but yet we were doing interviews in person. So the best thing for us was that when we were going to screen our candidates, we did it over the phone, at least for the first interview, and that was a big, the moment. That's something we should have been doing that the whole time. We wanted to see how people's intonation, their tone was on the phone, and a variety of other mannerisms as well. We wanted to see if they were able to carry a conversation. Again, this worked for our industry. It may not work for you, but this is one of the ideas that really worked for us. The second thing that we kind of learned is that we wanted to hire for our industry, again, going back to the Xerox thing. And one of the things that we saw was that the people that did well were people who didn't have college degrees, people who had to find a way to work around what society put up against them and work around them to still be successful. And those were the people who were very, very street smart individuals. And that really was, that opened up the pool of talent for us, because one of the things that we definitely learned is, we would really, look for getting as many people into the top of the funnel, so that when we had people coming on the bottom of the funnel, they were quality individuals. So we tried to get as many candidates as we can in the top of the funnel through various job boards or referral sites or a whole bunch of other things. And that really worked well. So we would go through hundreds of candidates before we got people that we would actually do the interviews with. The next thing that we did was that, I started using online personality assessments, profiles that someone would take, and it would tell us a little bit more about them from a psychological standpoint. What we found those psychological tests were really good for was determining if someone was very self-motivated. And, getting a recruiter and a salesperson who's on the phone 100% of the day, they have to be very self-motivated, because they're commission driven. It's salary plus commission. And so they needed to be very highly motivated because of that. Now, the next thing we did, or not the next thing, but the very first thing we really did was to have a great and detailed job description along with measurements, so that the person who's coming into the job knew exactly what was expected of them. And then we also went over that job description and measurements with them yearly in their performance review, so that we never forgot what it was that you were here for, how you got evaluated. One of the other things that we did too was we really figured out the best type of questions. When I say we, typically the people who were doing the interview was me, my director of HR, who's one of my best people, and my other best person, which was my second in command, and she was also a recruiter. So it was between us three, and that made a big difference too, because I think I really respected their opinion, and we came at it from different angles. And what we would do is really come up with questions that we thought were well thought out questions that we would ask every candidate. And one of the techniques that we had learned through one of the books that we read was something called anchoring. And anchoring is where someone says something as that they say is a fact, and then you ask them to tell you a situation where they can prove to you in so many words that is what they did. So you wouldn't just, someone can't say, well, I'm highly motivated. You'd say, well, okay, give me examples where you were highly motivated. And you'd really dig into those things, quite honestly, to see if the person was telling you a bunch of bullshit. Because one of the best indicators of success is previous success at the same job. So we needed to see, certainly if they were highly motivated in other things they had done in their lives as well. So, well thought out questions. And then after the person interview, we all would sit down and kind of go through what our thoughts were. And, we were really good about going over, and respecting each other's opinions. And boy, did our hiring got so much better after we kind of did this process. One of the other things that we kind of learned is to also be very honest with our candidates. We told them the positives, the negatives about the job, the company, and the industry that they're going to be working in. And what it really did was allowed us to get people who knew what they were getting into, and they came in, there was no surprises. And we found that we were able to really, impress people with how thorough we were. Because people want to work for companies that are well organized and know what they're doing. And, it really showed, because we had very little turnover in the second company that I had built. And that carried through all the companies I built. Once I really put a lot of time and effort into hiring, it really paid dividends down the road. And I got pretty good at making sure we hired the right people. And, then the last thing we really did was we made sure that we provided great training and follow-up to make sure that people had mentors and a variety of different things. So, again, some of this might not work for your company, but for for the whole purpose of this interview is to help you understand and really dive into the idea that it's not just a body you're placing into that position. It's someone who's really going to make your life easier. The better you do at that job, the more professional you get at building that methodology, the easier it's going to be for you as a business owner to run your business. Well, the second staffing company made huge difference, a huge improvement in not only my attitude about who I was working with, because I loved the people that I was working with in the second company, but also went on to be an Inc. 500 fastest growing company in the United States. And, I definitely know it was based on that whole interview methodology approach that we took. So you're not always going to be 100% perfect. We weren't always, but we knew it pretty quickly when when it wasn't the right type of match. I hope this helps you building your own company, keeping your sanity, building a company that you're proud of, like it did for me. So again, Steve Halasnik, keep at it and love what you do. I certainly have always loved owning my own companies. Thanks.